Hey everyone, welcome to another episode of the No Limit Selling Podcast. One of the most unhappiest people in the entire planet are sales managers when they're doing whatever they're doing and they think they're inspiring and motivating, and those cats that they're herding, aka sales team, aren't doing what they're telling them to do. And sometimes they can be obstinate, and that could lead to gnashing of teeth, tearing out of hairs. So the question is, how do you solve that problem? Well, I think what you need to do is call Gretchen Gordon. She's written a book about the happy sales manager. It could be true or a myth. Gretchen, welcome to the program.
Thanks, Umar. I'm thrilled to be here. And you described the environment that inspired me to write the book perfectly, where you've
Superb.
got stressed out, frustrated sales managers, and they don't know what to do.
Well, before we get started in earnest, let's just do a quick shout out to our show, the No Limit Selling Podcast, where mindset meets sales and leadership. So, Gretchen, oftentimes what happens is there is a really good salesperson in a sales organization. It's like, you know what? You could be the manager and we could just replicate you. Everything will be fantastic. So, A, do you think it's a myth that actually works? And if so, why doesn't it work?
So great questions, Umar. It can work, but often it doesn't work. And I'll tell you what, when I speak to audiences of, CEOs, business owners, they all shake their head and they've all done it, right? Because they're desperate and they're like, okay, this guy's great and people like him. He'll be able to lead the sales team. And the reason it doesn't frequently work out the way we have it planned in our head is because there are very distinct skill sets, number one, that are required to be a great salesperson, and which are different from being a great sales manager or sales leader. But also there's a different mindset that you need to adopt. And so, the person who was the superstar salesperson is all about them. They're probably somewhat motivated on their own, goal driven, accomplishment driven, and they're used to kind of figuring it out and getting it done because that's what they're supposed to do. They're a solo or a lone wolf kind of
Right.
person.
And there's a quote from the Talmud. It goes something like this: we do not see the universe as it is, we see it as we are. And that lone wolf comes out and says, hey, that's what you need to do. Why are you bothering me? It's your customers. Get out there. And so tell me about, if you can think of one, a transition where someone was this great salesperson and they transitioned to being a manager and became really effective, because that's a mythical beast as well. But do you have one in mind that you can tell us a story?
Yeah, absolutely. I could tell you lots of stories of failed transitions and
Yes.
why. And actually, my own transition from sales to sales manager, the first time I did it was a complete and total disaster because exactly what you said. I had the mindset of a salesperson and thought, okay, well, they promoted me to sales manager, so they must want me to get the team to do it the way I do it. And so everything was from my perspective, telling them what to do, having a full agenda, what to do and how to do it, and not really understanding that you have to come at it from their perspective. So to give you an example of a really good one, though, an individual that I'd worked with, and then worked with at two places, actually. One company where we were in sales together, and then another company where he actually hired me as he was the sales manager. And so I think as I was writing the book, actually, and thinking about what works and what doesn't work and why, he's popped into my head a lot, actually. And he was a really, really strong salesperson because he was motivated, goal driven, connected well with people, was able to ask maybe hard-hitting or robust questions of prospects. So he brought those things to being a sales manager, um, where he just transitioned from asking thought-provoking, robust questions of prospects, but turned that on the salespeople. And so, what that looks like is, okay, so we're getting ready to, go in this sales conversation or this meeting with a prospective client. What are you going to say? And how are you going to say it? And what if they say this? What are you going to do? And whenever we as salespeople would come into his office, well, so let me back up for a second. He was making us think, right? He wasn't just telling us what to do. He was helping each one of us grow,
Mm.
which is, in my opinion, what a sales manager, sales leader's job is. They're more of a coach, helping the person be better than they would be if the manager wasn't involved. That's the way I think about it. But secondly, if we ever, if I came into his office and said, "Hey, I got a question about this. I got to, talk to this guy
Mm.
about this thing. What should I do?" Instead of just saying, "Do this, say this, when he objects, say this, blah, blah, blah," he would say to me, "Well, what do you think you should say? Or what do you think you should do?" "Well, I don't know. That's why I came in here." "Well, what do you think I would tell you to do?"
Mm.
The shifting of the mindset to, I don't have to have all the answers as a sales manager. I have to enable my team to come up with the answers.
I think there's a really powerful quote that kind of speaks to this. It's like the smart man knows the answers, the wise man knows the right questions. And by asking those questions, A, you elevate their thinking, and B, sometimes the salesperson is way genius and it's like, oh, the rest of the team needs to know this. And if you actually give advice at that point, well, here's why what you suggested would work, but here's how it could be better. You're teaching them to think at a higher level and not just giving them the answer. So totally genius. I love that. So one of the problems that sales managers have is when they hire a new sales rep. Gretchen, I want you to, well, you are sitting down, so just in case you faint, but sometimes people look really good on the resume and really good on the first interview. So how do you help sales managers navigate that uh, large chasm of actually finding the right members for his or her team?
Yeah, this is one of the areas that I guess is like a happiness secret for
Mm.
a sales manager. A lot of times, sales managers, aren't that skilled at interviewing appropriately, and aren't that skilled at figuring out, is this person going to be the right fit for this position? They just want the position filled because it's not their necessarily their most comfortable skill set that they have to interview. They just want it filled. They've got a spot. We got to get on with it. What a lot of managers don't realize is that it will make your life worse if you make a mistake with that hire, right? It's going to be more painful. You're probably going to hang on to them too long because it wasn't fun hiring the last time and onboarding them. So you hang on to them too long and it's painful and you hate it and miserable.
And just to add to that
Um,
before you go on,
yeah,
I think the stats from the American Society of Training and Development, for a good salesperson that leaves a company, it costs 250% of their annual salary to replace them because the downtime, getting the right rep, getting them up to speed. So make sure you're getting the right rep is crucial, because if you make a mistake, it's not a $10,000 problem. It's a $250,000 problem.
big. Yeah, and and getting, to continue on that same line of thought, it's also nearly as costly. Some people would say it's more costly to hire the wrong person And, there's the biggest element, either because, you have to replace the person or because you got the wrong person in the seat, is the opportunity cost associated with either poor performance or, vacant, the vacant spot. So yeah, it's time, frustration, training, money, dollars, it's
Distraction for
everything.
the
Just
VP of sales.
exactly. And sometimes for the whole team, you
Mm,
know, sometimes it's a burden on the whole team. So what I find one of the biggest challenges that sales managers face is that they spend too much time in an interviewing process trying to make the other party feel comfortable. Well, how do you know if this prospective salesperson can actually sell if you make it too easy for them? And I'm not
right.
saying do the cheesy sell me the pen. I'm just saying you got to poke holes at whatever the salesperson is, or the prospective salesperson, the candidate might be saying, if it doesn't jive in your head. And a lot of times, what I see is that the hiring manager is too nice. And I'm not saying be a jerk and be mean and all that kind of stuff, but I'm saying poke, like get down to it. It's not the stuff that they tell you that they're great at that gets them in trouble. It's the stuff that's beneath the surface
Mm,
that prevents them from being successful. And it's the things that we tend to hide in our brain because we like them. The salesperson was likable. We built a relationship with them. They're easy to talk to. So we end up projecting onto the candidate that they can figure it out like I figured it out. I mean, it's just this common thing. So we have to assume that they are not like us, that they're not going to be able to figure it out. So what are the blind spots going to be? What are the gaps, the difficulties? What's going to get them in trouble? That's what the managers need to focus on in interviewing.
so, why don't you give us like the top 5 things sales managers need to be good at to be great at their job?
Okay. Can I give you 4?
Yeah, absolutely.
So they need to understand that they need to motivate or inspire their
Mhm.
team. And that sometimes is very uncomfortable in that I didn't need motivated when I was a salesperson. So they should just come to the job motivated. But the truth of the matter is that, the world's changed, the workforce has changed. You need to understand individually what inspires each person on your team and tap into that. Some people it's money, rewards, recognition. Some people it's just wanting to be the best salesperson they can be, satisfaction of doing a great job. And
So,
the manager needs to understand that completely about all their people. So that's
one,
number
so let's
one.
actually dig deep into that. Then we'll go to number 2. So, what would be some of the phraseology that a sales manager could use to elicit the correct response of what motivates you?
Well, it really starts well, so first of all, and this will happen in the interview too, going
Mm,
back to that. If it's a highly commissioned position, a lot of salespeople are going to think that they need to be, highly money motivated. And the truth of the matter is, it's almost 2/3 of salespeople are not, solely money motivated. So if you ask the question, so are you motivated by money? Do you want to make more stuff? Typically the salesperson is going to say
yes.
yes because they want more money. Who doesn't want more money, right? But they also think that they're supposed to answer that way because they want a sales position. So you can't ask, what gets you fired up. You start with maybe a goal planning session, not, here's your sales
Mm,
goal, how are you going to achieve it? But what is it that's important to you? If you think out over the next 3 to 5 years, if you think out over 10 years, if you think about, when you get to the end of your career, what do you want to have accomplished? And then you can kind of figure out, okay, what gets their juices flowing? What gets them out of bed in the morning to come in and do the job? And it can be everything from, I wanna retire in 10 years, and so I wanna make as much money as I can right now. So and this is how much I need to make. Or it can be, I really want to be in a position where I can spend more time volunteering, or I need to help my elderly parents, or I need, whatever it is. But if you can get honest and dare I say, intimate with your salespeople and understanding what makes them tick, it's going to be easier to pull that out from goal setting, what's important to them, than it is to just say, what gets you motivated. Because the vast majority of people are not going to be as motivated as the person that just got promoted to sales manager. They're not. I mean, that's just what we see over
And
millions of people.
and just to add to that, I think just casually asking, in your last position, sounded like it was a great position. What were you most proud of?
Oh, I
And
love that.
sometimes
Yeah.
that'll come in at a tangent, especially if you're midway through a conversation, where sometimes they'll just reveal what's in the unconscious. Oh, when I was recognized as XYZ, or when the company really needed me and I stepped up. So sometimes that really helps. So what's number two? Motivation was number one. What's number two?
Yep, motivation was number 1. Number 2 is accountability.
Mm,
So, being, motivation and goals, without some form of discipline and accountability to them, is gonna be subpar at best and total failure at worst. And, a lot of times managers, and especially new managers, think that accountability is micromanagement, and they're
mm,
like, "Oh, that sounds horrible, right? I don't wanna do that." It's actually the complete opposite. If you can get the salesperson thinking about what's important to them, what they need to do, and how much money do they want to make, and what does that look like, they can create their own plan of attack. And then the manager is really the accountability partner. Think of it
mm.
like being a good friend who would tell you if you had, food in your teeth, or if you had a spot on your shirt. It's the same thing. Tell them the truth about they didn't do what they said they were going to do, what they committed to do to accomplish those goals. And that's probably one of the biggest things that we see managers struggle with, because they think, well, I didn't want to be micromanaged. And it's not that. It's having the salesperson set their own plan of attack and holding them accountable to it. And you'll have much greater success. The other thing is if the sales manager wants to be liked too much, doesn't want to
Yeah.
be the bad guy, that can be hard. So the sales manager needs to plan out those conversations if the salesperson hasn't done what they committed to do, and say, "Look, I'm just trying to help you reach your goals." So accountability is number 2.
Yeah. And I think also really getting from the salesperson, what's the driver that drives their entire business? And that could be follow-ups. It could be first appointments. And then just saying, okay, why don't we monitor that? And I'll be your accountability partner. And that way, the business is on track. So do what Gretchen said, because that's gold. And sometimes adding this in just becomes a simple measure that, are you doing the follow-ups you said? And it's like, oh, no, I wasn't. So it's like, okay, how can I help you do more of those? So what's number 3? Motivation number 1, accountability number 2, number 3 is
Coaching.
excellent.
So, yeah. So coaching is, a lot of people don't really understand what coaching is. We talked a little bit about it earlier on, but I think of it in the framework of my job as a manager is to coach the other person to be better than they would be if I wasn't around.
Oh, I love
So
that.
helping a salesperson reach a greater height than they could on their own.
Brilliant. And I like that phrase, it's like for podcasts, it's my job to make you shine. And it's not about me looking great, because they're the most boring podcasts on the planet. But when you get the best performance out of a subject matter expert, that's where everybody wins, especially the listeners. And so what is bring it home, Gretchen? What's number 4?
Number 4 is hiring, and we started talking about
Yes.
the fact that that's the happiness secret that is kind of this hidden dirty secret and we don't talk about it. It is a skill to hire and then onboard appropriately. And most managers, unless you're in a company where it's just, you're hiring dozens of people over and over and over again, it's not a muscle that a sales manager necessarily uses all the time. So it atrophies. So you need to plan it out as, the interviewing, who is it that will work for us, who will work out for us? What do I want to avoid? What have the failures been in the past? And what are the questions I need to ask to find out, is this person actually going to be, like their resume says they're, perfect. And be willing, just like on the accountability front, be willing to ask the hard questions. I can't tell you how many leaders, they're going through a hiring process and they talk to us and they say, I really like this candidate, but there's something that I just, I'm not sure she can do this, or I'm not sure of that. I'm like, ask. It's the, get the candidate
It's not complicated.
right, to tell you what they can and can't do. So those are the four.
So, that's where, so you've got the CEO of the company, then you've got the chief revenue officer that reports to them, perhaps, but at worst, at minimal, you got a VP of sales. Then it goes down to the sales managers. Then it goes down to the salespeople. And oftentimes where the failure happens is at the sales manager level. So this book is much needed because there's talent within an organization, and how can we get the best out of it is at the level of sales manager. So thank you for writing the book.
Yeah. And I'm, it was a personal passion of mine because early in my career, I made so many mistakes, and I'm just trying to help others who probably don't have a great example of a sales manager and aren't trained or taught or coached on how to do it appropriately. Just trying to help them avoid the same mistakes I made.
Brilliant. Gretchen, is there any last words you want to share with us before we part company? Perhaps something on your website that people can have access to?
Yeah, probably the easiest thing. So website is braveheartsales.com, braveheartsales.com, just like the movie. And there is a tab there, The Happy Sales Manager. You can also get to it by thehappysalesmanager.com. And you can download a free chapter of the book. You can get a link to buy the book. You can download the workbook that goes along with it. Find out more about us. That's probably the best place to scout around.
Superb. Gretchen, thanks so much for being on the show. It was a great conversation, and I'm looking forward to our next.
Thanks, Umar. I appreciate it. It was great to see you.
Okay, hold on for a second.